Live. We're on. We're doing it. Yeah. Yeah. Yay for the computer. I don't know. Oh, and people are joining. This is great. Welcome,
Awesome.
everybody. Yay. Well, Michael, I will let you go first and do a quick introduction, and then I'll do one, and then we'll just hop right in. What do you think?
Okay, sounds good. All right, so for anybody that doesn't know me, I'm Michael Grayson. I came on the Substack. I would think it was like in the middle of December, starting my writing journey. I was in the middle of handwriting my memoir, Blades of Resurrection. I've made it all the way to almost completing line editing of that now, and that won't be available in the fall for everyone. But since then, I've just developed an incredible community on Substack just because there's a specific niche for just about everything. And I feel like I've been able to learn so much about other people and relate to other people better, even if it's like a viewpoint that I don't 100% agree with. Still, gaining that viewpoint is helps me like understand my own situations about my own life even better. So
Yeah.
good to be here with you all.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you, Michael. And I am Joy D. I write for Astronaut of Life, which is the name of my thing. I have a YouTube named Astronaut of Life, and so I went ahead and named my Substack that. I just love exploring things. I love the symbolism of an astronaut. That's why we got this one guy going on, and exploring inner and outer stuff. So very broad. But Michael and I are discussing burnout as a neurodivergent, specifically, as we were talking before, mainly in like social interactions, is what you said, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, let me put this down here. Um, so can you tell me, Michael, like your experience with this? Let's just start there before we go into like strategies and stuff.
So I think a good way to start this is that there are a lot of very frequent situations in life where somebody they think of it as like the ultimate great experience. I'll give you an example. Being a guest at a wedding, people get so excited, so amped, and so thrilled about that. But there are situations where you're invited by someone and the bride or the groom is the only person that you know at that wedding. You know you're being extremely, extremely rude if you don't attend that wedding, but that socialization, especially when you don't know anybody else there, putting yourself in that situation as a neurodivergent individual is its own form of hell. And like a lot of people don't understand, it's like, oh, they're being so rude by leaving early, or why are they not talking to anybody. I think like a lot of it just isn't so much as like, oh, I don't like neurodivergent individuals. It just kind of stems from a lack of understanding. And I have like some very good examples to show us like why that occurs and what we can do about that.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one. I love that example about a wedding. I feel like I've had similar experiences, maybe not to a wedding, but to share my own. I've always been fairly good at making friends, but in the past, when I had to do something where I only knew like one person and they couldn't stay with me the whole time, I would essentially become a wallflower. Ah, I do have a memory. I went to a birthday party for one of his friends. This is like a very long time ago. And I only knew my boyfriend. I didn't know anybody else at the party. And so I literally just sat there in the corner, like
Mm.
the whole time. And a few people might have approached me, like other women there, but otherwise I didn't, there was no mingling of the peoples,
Mhm.
right? Um, and my journey in this was, mm, for me, was maybe like 6 or 7 years ago. I was like, you know what? I don't have any friends, and I really want to get this skill of figuring it out. And so I started to volunteer at a place like locally. And while I didn't know anybody, right? I was actually volunteering to teach, not teach, but lead writing seminars. Um, and so when we were called facilitators. So in my facilitator training, I'm meeting all these people, and they're all writers, right? It's very beautiful, but no, it was still really hard. And then a year later, I was traveling on my own in Mexico City, and I distinctly remember I was in a Spanish class with two other people, and I was like, I'm just gonna ask them to go to lunch after class. And it felt like the hardest thing in the world to just say, hey, do you guys want to get lunch? But I made myself do it. And one of them couldn't go, and the other one could. And him and I went to lunch, and we had a beautiful time, and it was great. And it was like proving to myself I could even do that. And that the other girl, she was busy. There was no like, she hates me, no thoughts like that. I was very easy to understand. I just started building on that. But I think let's tie them both together here. So, what that was my strategy. I guess I'm explaining my strategy. What this took years. So, do you have a quicker strategy, or how did you go about it?
So the way I kind of went about it is that when I was able to, it's like I kind of tried to just focus on one specific thing that was in front of me. If I could find like just that one thing to keep me occupied, I could develop a bit of tunnel vision around
Mm,
that. Same time, like when you do that, when you're in like this big crowd of people or whatever, you stand out when you do that, when you're in like a younger like school age or social setting like that, it opens you up to a lot of bullying because like you're a very easy target when you begin to do that. And even at an adult level, let's say like another good example in addition to like weddings is like a workplace office party. You
yeah.
go to it's like, what's wrong with this person? They're not like out here talking to me. I guess they don't really like me all that much. And then like that's where all kinds of workplace rumors and whatnots start with. But kind of based on what you were saying, I think we should bring it up. There is a difference between socialized anxiety about like just being anxious about the interaction and a neurodivergent approach to it. I think the difference from it is I'm not trying to diminish social anxiety at all in any way whatsoever, but a big difference that we have to take into account is that you're simply nervous about like initiating like the one action about just like saying hi and starting a conversation. A neurodivergent individual is thinking about is just like, where should I stand when I talk to this person? What type of tone of voice should I speak in? What words specifically should I say? Is like, what if they give me an awkward look? What do I do then? And it's like, what if I interrupt this person over here? A neurodivergent is thinking of all of those possibilities all the time. And if a neurodivergent person has social anxiety, on top of all of that, it gets that much amplified and that much more difficult for that person.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I used to have very bad anxiety. Um, so my method was mainly just exposure, right? That's what I was doing, was just exposing myself where, and I would have thoughts like that. Maybe not so much like, am I sitting the right way? Am I whatever? But it was all like, can they even hear me? Because I'm not a very loud person, right? Are they ignoring me, or did they just not hear me? Can I even decide? Can I decipher which one's going on, right? Um, One thing I've always done though that sometimes would happen to me when I was the wallflower. But if I'm in that kind of event, I look for other people who seem uncomfortable
To be
or
wallflower. Yeah,
other
that's
wallflowers, and you can make really good friends with them, right? If you're a wallflower too. And then you both relax, right? Have you had that experience?
yeah, sometimes that happens a lot when neurodivergent figures end up finding one of each other, and they can kind of just kind of shield protect themselves, so to speak.
Well, I that was something that came to me in childhood. I went to a lot of different schools growing up, so I was always the new kid. So eventually I was fairly skilled at, adjusting. So whenever there was a new kid that came after me, I had this desire to help them ease into it, right? Or to befriend them and everything. And that's carried on into adulthood. But it certainly would confuse me, especially when I was younger, how there's obviously somebody here who is not participating and maybe wants to, but doesn't have, you know, they're a little shy or however you want to word it, right? And everybody else seems just completely engrossed in each other and what they're doing. And that always, I've had a hard time even now. Like, how do you not notice this other person? Or like, why are you ignoring them? Like, can you give them a bid? Why is this, I don't know, that's a rant. I'm a little ranting right now, but, um, but then I have to be like, Joy, not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody went to a freaking 5 different elementary schools, right? So they don't really not have that skill and they're engrossed and laughing, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So I have to kind of bring myself down when I get like that. But yeah, well, tell me some more, Michael, about what feels like as a neurodivergent. Um, yeah, like growing up, and then like, did you learn anything from childhood that you carried into adulthood, like my story just then?
Well, one of the things that I carried in, and I discuss this quite a bit, is that some of the things that we learn, especially in emotional context, um, carry those patterns into adulthood and help us use it to frame our way of life, whether that's really really good or bad. Like one of the bad things that I talk about where I was falsely made to confess for killing the baby bird, the central tenet to my memoir, and it helped. I won't say helped, it made me override my own truth within myself for so many different years. So I'd probably say one of the more precarious things regarding that situation is if you learn something that is like some kind of a false belief or like something that we use for a coping belief,
Mm.
it's much more difficult to come out of that as a neurodivergent person than a neurotypical person. One comparison, I wrote this in an article I wrote called hypervigilant trauma. The kind of way that a neurodivergent person forms their neuron pathways is similar to how the roads were built in ancient Rome. They took a lot longer, but at the same time, they're a lot sturdier and have been around for thousands of years. For a neurotypical person, like the modern infrastructure, it's designed to put roadways up and work quickly, but at the same time, it there's always like constant maintenance going on with them. Also, so like I would probably say is like I'm not neurotypical, and so I can't assume this for everyone, but they're able to kind of change the lanes and routes a little bit easier than a neuro divergent person growing up.
Like navigate unpredictability.
Right, right. Because it's just like it seems like the natural flow of things. Another good comparison I came up to, especially in regards to driving, is when you're in a social interaction, a when you drive the same route to work every single day, it almost becomes like second instinct, autopilot. When you're going into a social interaction as a neurodivergent individual, it's like you're driving to a whole new location each day, and that attention, the detail to make sure that you're going to the right spot and you don't miss the right turn. That kind of talks about that burden that leads to burnout that we were talking about to begin with.
Yeah. Well, let's focus on burnout. So, what does that look like in this scenario? Do you just stop going to events? You stop, or you? Yeah, I'll let you answer that.
Well, what we do is that we don't like simply close ourselves off from society, although like going out to be a hermit in the woods somewhere does sound very appealing at times. Um, like what we do is, you've probably heard of the term before, is like we learn to mask, and it's actually
Yeah.
a term called neurodivergent masking, where we become we're able to emulate and show neurotypical behaviors very, very well. But you probably won't find anybody who's a better actor than somebody who is a neurodivergent person. And usually is like if they're very highly intelligent, they're able to do that for a very long time, and it often leads to very misdiagnosis or late diagnosis or being gaslit by medical professionals.
I don't know. I don't know enough about this, but isn't there also a difference between the way things show up in women and men in neurodivergence? Because women are very relational and maybe conditioned to be more social. Or I'm not well versed in this at all. This is just questions. I don't know if you know at all. It's okay if you do.
I I can't say that I'm like I have a particular knowledge of the gender differences in neurodivergence, even though that's a very intriguing topic. Um, what I would imagine though is just like the typical situations that a neurodivergent girl versus a neurodivergent boy um, growing up, it just like encounters a lot of those like different social differences. Like I would probably say, no, your typical teenage girl tends to be a little more clicky than your teenage boy does. Like that might be a little bit of a generalization right there. So, but yeah, that's just like those differences that they might have like be a little bit more accustomed to like reacting to clicks, but at the same time, I don't want to make an overgeneralization.
Oh, well, I just, I'm kind of drifting our topic, but that's okay because we can do that. I know like ADHD and little girls, they're not bouncing off the wall. It's not what it looks like. It's in their minds, right? It's not you can't actually see it, but their minds are going a mile a minute. Um, and yeah, just in general, things are studied on men and not women until more recently. So they're learning all this stuff as we go, kind of a thing. We can shelf that if we want. Back to the burnout. Yeah. Um, what's been your experience with burnout?
So, kind of like what it is, it leads to a lot of self blaming and shame, calling your self lazy, especially when you're procrastinating various different tasks. But what you have to realize is that so many like everyday tasks, like like going to the grocery store or doing household chores, you're trying to think of like multiple steps to do that. And if you have ADHD, and I've recently been diagnosed with adult ADHD, you start thinking about like so many different projects, and instead of like initiating and executing the tasks to actually accomplish those projects, you keep like adding things. It's like opening more and more browsers, and then you have so many browsers open that you can't possibly do everything that you're trying to do. And then things get just pile up, and then you don't start any of them, and you cope with procrastination, and then you call yourself lazy, and it leads to like a lot of negative self
Mm.
talk.
Is that sounds like overthinking and anxiety to me? In my experience, is there a difference? Or is there like it's taken me a good we'll say 7 years, but I used to have that type of mindset and now I don't.
I would say that it probably kind of just shifts from thing to thing that you're trying to accomplish, because like you're constantly worrying and ruminating about one thing, and then you're thinking about the other thing um that you're trying to accomplish, and you simply don't know where to start with anything.
Yeah. So the burnout is essentially like an what feels like an inability to focus is what it sounds like. Like if you're at the grocery store, you might not even have had time to make a list, right? So now you might start thinking about, well, what do I want to eat? And then you get lost in all the other things you need to be or want to be doing. Is that does that sound right?
Right, right, and it's just kind of simply being in a proximity to other people when you're doing that. I found a lot of that like really got compounded and exacerbated during COVID when they took away like a lot of the nighttime shopping hours. Like even if you're not talking to people, you're still have them around you, and it's just kind of it's like I want to like get this here, and then I want to get out of here. And it's kind of like wandering around people who are just kind of, they're like looking forever in one place, and you're trying to get there, and then you go somewhere else, and then you forget about that, and then you end up like leaving the store without actually getting what you even intended to get with to begin with. And you're thinking like how not only how you should react, but you're thinking about like how to emotionally regulate yourself, and that emotional regulation because becomes another task right on top of everything else.
I find that even now, um, it's much calmer if I go to the store on my by myself because I can go as slow as I need, and I can if I forget something, I just walk to the other end of the store and get it, right? But if I'm
Mhm.
with somebody else, I'm now more hyper aware of, you know, like, are they in a rush? Like I'm trying to match them versus like going my own speed. And that creates that kind of anxious feeling or that overthinking where it's like, just take, like, whoosh, we're just getting the food. That's all we're doing, right? We're just getting the food. And it's okay. Like, kind of have to parent myself in a way. Um, or I default to them and let them make all the decisions and just try to be the helper, right? And I'm not, as equal of a participant. Or it can swing the other way where I'm like, no, I'm going to delegate and I'm going to, it's just a lot different. That's where it shows up for me. On my own, I'm okay. I don't really care about other people. Usually, old people ask me to get some up high for them because I'm real tall, right? Otherwise, nobody really talks to me, and I can go through it pretty calm. But yeah, it's interesting how these things show up, and it's all essentially unspoken, right? We don't usually tell people what all's going through our mind when we're doing a simple task of just going to the grocery store, right? And what all that entails and what all it means to. like how proud we might feel when we actually do get everything on our list or whatever, right? Or we did make it through the store without having a what felt like a breakdown, or where you just want to leave, or pressure, any of these things, right? It all goes essentially unnoticed.
And for anybody who's just kind of curious about a way that you can like describe life overall, especially when it comes to communicating with other people for a neurotypical person versus a neurodivergent person. The best comparison that I was able to come to is if you show um, both a neurotypical person and a neurodivergent person a photograph. Communicating for the neurotypical person is like they're able to basically describe the photograph in one sentence, and it kind of that kind of communication flows out a little bit easier. A neurodivergent individual is constructing a whole essay or even a book potentially about that same photograph, and we're trying to communicate all of that in. And since we can't possibly communicate all of that when we're trying to, we either say something kind of off the wall or we just kind of back out and don't react altogether.
Yeah, I can hear you there, because I'm like, oh, I don't think I could do that in one sentence, or I'd have to. It would take a lot of focus, and it to keep myself to one sentence to describe a photograph, because most of my thoughts aren't words for me. They're images, or or energy, or feel something I feel or sense, and I have to translate my thoughts into words, right? Which can take some processing. Um, and from my tiny bit of research, that's pretty normal for an adult dyslexic to have all these. Sometimes I hear in words, but I'm constantly translating what I'm actually thinking. It doesn't. There's no like kind of flow thing, right? Um, because yeah, yeah. No, I feel you. Hmm. What other what other strategies are there that you have to navigate life in this way? We'll say.
This can be quite the delicate balance to accomplish, but a lot of people think of it as a neurodivergent person just like simply isolating. But when you do that, when you're like constantly thinking about that, you need a little bit of separation from that because that's when we're able, we like to call it recharging our social batteries
Yeah.
during times. Like you definitely like do not, you should not be ashamed. It's like, oh, I'm not like going out or showing up to this person. But if they like try to force themselves to do that, it's like not going to be good for anyone involved. So that's like one important boundary that someone that's neurodivergent has to kind of put into place. And in terms of that boundary, I actually listed this as like one of the things that like we all can do. So neurotypical and neurodivergent people can kind of relate better to one another. There, we kind of needed to like take away like the shame and the stigma of calling yourself like a neurodivergent or autistic or ADHD person. I think like a simple way to do that is something that we've kind of incorporated into society in general. Let's say, for example, there's a man flirting with a woman, and the woman says, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm a lesbian," and that's the end of the interaction. There's nothing wrong that happened with that. She communicated like what it was. He understood that. Everything's fine after that. I think it would be really easy to say, like, hey, it's like I'm on the spectrum, or if you want a slang term, you could even call it like, hey, I'm on the spec for it. And if we become comfortable not only saying that, but people receiving that message, that it will improve relations for everything and everyone.
Well, that also creates the space for you to not even mask, right?
Right, exactly.
Because now it's out there, and now they're going to be more curious on how to relate to you. Like, oh, well, what does that mean for you? Like, do you need more time to think about an answer? Do you need me to give you questions in yes or no? Whatever, right? To me, that if somebody said that to me, that wouldn't offend me at all. I would actually make me want to lean in and
Mhm.
talk to them more and get curious about like, oh, well, like, I don't know. Now you're extra cool to me. Like, tell me more. Like, how do
Yeah,
you
that's
know this?
some people
Right?
that I think like at that point, if you try to change that, like somebody who's like curious, wants to get to know a neurodivergent person better, they just kind of like need to change the context from like a little more like kind of a one-on-one to versus like a big crowd scene way that's going to be a much more effective strategy than like, hey, come over here with my group of friends.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, I there's a lot to it. One, you got to know what you're capable of, right? Um, this kind of hits back on another point that I've had to learn over the years, and thankfully, having a child helped me a lot because when I was pregnant and when I was a new mom, I had no energy, and I couldn't talk to my friends at the rate I was before I was pregnant. Right? Like I need effing sleep. Like I don't have time to talk. I have barely enough energy to like be awake, and I'm in pain. I don't want to talk to people. Right? I have to focus on me, and that really because before that, if anybody messaged me, I was so quick to respond. And if I wasn't in a position where I could respond, I could feel it wait, like, oh, are they mad at me? And have all those intrusive thoughts, right? And it took a few years, again, I'm nice and slow about things, of practicing this where it was just like, I will get to that when I have the energy to get to that. It doesn't mean I have my feelings for this person have not changed at all, right? But I'm honoring myself for a change where I don't have the energy to respond right now. And it's okay that I can, maybe I could be like, I will listen to this voice note tomorrow or something, right? If I need to.
Mm.
But that took mindfulness on my end and time to get used to it. Felt very big at first to act that way, and now it's just normal. But it was like a slow progress of like easing myself into creating that boundary essentially, right?
Mhm.
I'm not saying I did it perfect or anything, but I had to be consistent, and it took a while, and now it's integrated and it's fine and it's beautiful and it's healthy. It's healthy. Yeah. Um, but that's a social strategy, I would say. Because we can say all these things like, yes, you need boundaries, but learning how to actually act them out and
Mhm.
you're still gonna like it's gonna feel weird at first, right?
Right.
To do it, and it's gonna feel uncomfortable, and
Mm.
for me it made me more anxious, and I would just have to kind of like sit with that. And over time, every time I did it, I realized no, they didn't get mad at me, right? This relationship's still fine, even though not as I'm not masking, right? And yeah, once you learn that, ooh, it's gorgeous to like give that love yourself in this way, because that's to me that's to put some spiritual language on it. To me, that's what you're doing is you're showing yourself love and them because it's respect, right? Okay, I'm off that soapbox now.
Yeah, that's a very important thing to talk about because I know we were talking about a lot of like negative reinforced talk that we give ourselves. It's also equally important to try to give ourselves our positive self
Yeah.
talk. I'm also not like one of those people like if there are negative things going on. I'm not one of those that like, oh, you just shift them to the positive, find a small thing to be thankful for, because if you're doing that, you're actually largely ignoring a lot of those negative emotions. But what you really have to do is you just kind of have to embrace those negative things that are, or perceived negative things that are going on, just so you can live with them and like learn that like you were saying, is like this person wasn't mad at me at all to begin with. What you can do in those situations, like you realize those, you recognize them for what they are, their emotions, and when you're able to fully accept and embrace them, they start to lose your power and impact for you. And when you do those same things, like when you accept those negatives, I found when you accept the negative, you make room for the positive.
Yeah. Well, there's one reason I would have that thought, right, is because at some point in life, somebody did get mad at me. So I'm projecting that onto every scenario after it. If I don't respond, they're going to get mad, right? And that's a nervous system thing, right? So I'm retraining my nervous system by like, you know what? This friend is not that other person, right? And I kind of walk myself through it. And it's like, if they get mad, I know how to handle someone mad, right? I know I can navigate it. It won't be fun, but I can do it. And for me, it also was learning that those intrusive negative thoughts often were not truth for whatever was going on in the present, right? Again, they were the truth from whatever happened in the past, but not necessarily like right now, right? Right now, I don't have anybody in my life who would get mad if I don't text them in the next 10 minutes,
Mm.
right? Um, so it's real life. When I had a therapist actually that was working me through this about 10 years ago, and it was just like, Joy, that you don't actually have to, that does just because you're thinking them doesn't mean they're true, right? And that was like an epiphany for me because it felt true, right? It felt true because I was feeling it in my body, um, but I would also be like, that's not in my present. This is not the same person. Again, it took time, but eventually that just faded
Mm.
to where I don't really. If I have an intrusive thought, it's almost like, well, look at you showing up, right? Like, oh, what are you doing here? You're trying to scare me. Like, well, what are you showing me? And it's very easy to sit with. But in 10 years ago, woo, no, it was a little rough. It was rough. Um, yeah, this, yeah, this stuff is, important. Obviously, that's why we're talking about it. But, um, to me, you gotta have grace with yourself and give yourself the time and consistency of just keep trying, right? To to rewire. Um, not This is not necessarily this to me. This is an everybody thing, not a neurodivergent specific thing. Uh, this is more like a trauma response type of thing, right?
Mm. Um,
Um, yeah,
and
that's
along
oh,
those lines, Joy, this is a little bit off topic, but it comes back into it very well. I read something very interesting. I forget where it was. It was dealt with dark psychology, though. It deals with when you have somebody that's in like a really strong power dynamic or situation, or whether it's like um a leader in a dictatorship, or if it could be just like a really abusive boss at work, the way they compared it was is like they take that as like they constantly have a sword to your head, but they don't have a whole lot of intention of actually like cutting your head off with that sword because they know that actually getting your head cut off with the sword, it takes away their power over
Mm.
you. And they know it's an even greater form of torture to have the threat of that sword coming across you in a modern day way to frame that is like when you're in a situation with a boss like that and they're constantly threatening to fire you, the fear of getting fired is so much more impactful than actually getting fired in a lot of different situations. And that's what kind of like we, in essence, we end up doing that to ourselves is like that constant worrying and ruminating of those specific thoughts. It's like that has much more of a mental toll and a mental burden than actually sitting and processing the feeling that we're trying to avoid to begin with.
Well, actually, my first ex-husband was like that boss
Mm.
you described. And that was what I had to go to therapy for, was it was his voice in my head. And it was fear, right? He just wanted to instill that fear to make himself feel powerful. And it at the time it worked. I was terrified. Um, but hmm, yeah. Okay, I just had a dyslexic moment and I kind of forgot everything we were talking about. So give me a second to get back
Oh, sure.
on track. But yeah. Okay. Well, can you repeat the part um after the boss, like when you have those thoughts?
So when you have those kind of like obsessive intrusive thoughts yourself, like constantly having them hanging around there,
Yeah.
it that creates such a higher cumulative
Yeah.
burden actually sitting down and processing the feeling itself.
I remember when those therapy years, it my mind felt crowded, if that makes sense, with these negative thoughts. It felt like I was in the darkness. My mind was a dark place. There was maybe a tiny little speck of light way on that I never seemed to be able to get to. And I mean, that's why I went to therapy, because it was just too invasive for me. Now, this is trauma, not necessarily neurodivergent, right? Obviously, I had a traumatic marriage. So, but no, it was burdensome. It felt crowded. I didn't feel like I had any space for myself, right? That's what it felt like. And that was what I had to slowly do, is to learn to create that space for myself. So it sounds like this mimics or correlates quite well. Perhaps you can clarify the trauma to maybe a neurodivergent experience, or I mean, I am dyslexic, so I am under that umbrella, but hmm, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. But um do you think there's a correlation, or do you think it's trauma that implants that in all of us, or do you think it's, I know it can be in childhood or even adulthood, right? That creates those intrusive thoughts?
So what I think leads to those thoughts is that, like at one point in time, whatever thought pattern or strategy that you're doing that you employed there, it's like that helped you survive something. It helped you get through something. So you're using that as a frame of reference going forward to kind of shield yourself and your and protect yourself. Like let's say, like for example, a woman goes out somewhere and she's very nice and social. She meets a guy who ends up being like very, very abusive. So in that situation, she like never puts herself in that similar situation again because she attributes the like that entire situation of going out to such and such a place to is like, if I go out here, I'm gonna end up with this. And what we kind of have to do is like we kind of have to expand that. Like it's not like necessarily the one place or the entire situation, but we kind of have to like look at it as like a chain of events. And what we have to figure out is like where we have to institute our boundaries, or like even if like we institute those boundaries, like people might not want to respect them. We have to kind of identify where the danger zone is in terms of that. I don't know if that makes sense at all to you.
Y- Yeah, well, again, I've had a lived experience where um, I went somewhere and it did not go well, and I've refused to do that again. Um, and to me, is reasonable. And if somebody doesn't, if they can't handle that, then I'm like, then
Mhm.
obviously this isn't going to work out, right? Um, so yeah. Um, hmm. But in my situation, which I know I'm not giving the details, and I don't really want to on this, I actually this is a healthy way, but I do understand like it can be unhealthy too, right? To have that response to certain things, like it doesn't necessarily mean what happened to me will happen if I do that again, that that will occur, right? That's
Mhm.
not what it is. It's more I'm not going to put myself at at risk, right?
Oh,
Now, this is specific with women and dating kind of a thing. For me, well, I guess I'll say this. It was like going to the man's house on a first date. I'm not going to do that. Like that's just a no, right? We're going to meet in public. To me, that keeps me safe, right? Um, Now, to me, the extreme would be like, well, I'm not going to date at all. I'm just going to keep it to online romance and I'll just live in my house. That is an unhealthy response to that, right? Versus creating like, well, I won't go to your house until I know you really well, but I will, go to this restaurant where there's other people and I can easily leave should I need to, right? Um, but even if you have that response to isolate or to be really extreme with it, I think you're exactly right. Sitting with it, staying with it, getting a therapist if you need, friends, whatever you need, giving it the time it needs to move through all those emotions and the pain or whatever, right? And that will ease the intrusive thoughts too, because those are just trying to protect you so you don't relive what you did, what you've already lived, right? That's all those thoughts are trying to do. Um, yeah, it's it takes a lot of awareness to see that that's what your brain is doing, right? Like, oh, these are for protection. Wow, that's not really protecting me, but I could see where it's trying.
I remember the term that actually refers to. It's called a frivolous relationship. That's the specific name of the term, where we associate one thing with one thing where there is a correlation, but we have to realize that in that particular situation, correlation is not the same as causation.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we got 10 minutes here. Is there any other strategies you got, Michael, about burnout or any other like points we want to highlight?
Um, Honestly, I think it would be very, very helpful if we just started teaching from an educational standpoint early on exactly like what neurodivergence is in people, how to recognize it, and how to interact with someone who like identifies as neurodivergent or or neurotypical who might realize like, oh, this person might be neurodivergent. I think if we take it from separate lenses and we kind of just incorporate what we're teaching is like, oh, a lot of people won't be okay in this kind of interaction, but these people might not be okay in that interaction, and just like kind of teach those aspects of neurodivergence just so we can overall relate better to one another. It like, it'd be so helpful if this wasn't something that we're discovering decades later into our life. It would be so much more helpful if like it would be something that we learned as children
Yeah.
going forward.
Well, as a mother to a toddler, I can see it in some of like I don't know what it's called. I just call it Daniel. It's like the new Mr. Rogers. They actually do show it. Um where the little character will meet an autistic boy and be like, or a nonverbal person, right? A nonverbal autistic boy, and Daniel's like, oh, this is my friend Joey. He doesn't talk, but Joey, do you want to play with me? And Joey
Mm,
might not, and he's like, that's okay. If Joey doesn't want to play with, like teaching little kids how to interact with each other like that, I think that's beautiful. For us as adults who did not get that as children, right? It's a little bit of a different story. That's on us now as adults to educate ourselves
mm,
on what it looks like among each other, what it looks like with our children. As a parent, to me, that's on me to tell my daughter, not just, freaking TV shows,
right.
right? Um, yeah, I worked in mental health for quite a long time. So it's part of that was my job was like when I would take clients out in the community to educate the public on how to interact with these people, right? And it's like, no, they're just as human as you and I. We're not going to talk about them like they're not there, right? You don't need to address all your questions to me.
Mm,
You can. They have a tablet. You can actually ask them, and they'll give you an answer. Like they're actually a genius and probably smarter than both of us. So let's just let them talk, and it doesn't matter if it's through a tablet or not, right? Of course, I wouldn't probably word it that way, but you know what I mean. Like, oh, it's so needed. I completely agree with you, and yeah, for us adults, whether you are on the spectrum, whether you're neurodivergent, I think it's behooves us all to educate ourselves somewhat to learn about these things and to learn how to communicate with each other and see the human and the beauty in all of that,
mm,
you know?
absolutely. One thing I was kind of just thinking about for anybody that's watching, do we want to give them an opportunity to write some questions in the chat that we
Yeah.
could wrap up with?
I don't know if I sent it. Mm. Oh, there it goes.
Yeah, I see it now.
It takes it a bit. Yeah. I think cultivating just a love of diversity and a love of humanity is important. Um, you know?
Mm. Yeah, just like going from a perspective of just like trying to get everybody to comply in a certain way. If we take that chance to just make it into an understanding rather than trying to fit everybody in the one mold, it makes a better world for everyone.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I think we're getting there. It doesn't always seem that way. There's so many different aspects in the world where people choose to uh, point fingers, right? Or other the other person, other people. But when you when you reach a place of just love for all, ooh, that is so much more powerful than othering other people, in my
Hmm.
opinion. And when you get the love people together, it's powerful, and I really feel that quite a lot here on Substack. To be honest, it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Well, I don't see any comments or anything on my end,
Yeah, I don't think so.
and that's okay. That's okay. If you watch this after the fact, you're more than welcome to leave a comment, and one of us will see it and respond, and we get to do the discussion there. But Michael, thank you so much for joining me and having this discussion with
Have a,
me. Well, I will see you next time.
all right. Bye.
Bye.